You ready?
It's time to start.
This should be played at high volume.
This is the Andrea Shea King Show.
And I'm just a gal like any other gal.
That's cool.
You know what this is?
What is this?
The Andrea Shea King Show.
It's me, don't you remember?
We were just talking about you.
Totally amazing. Thank you.
The Andrea Shea King Show.
I think you've got something there.
Andrea Shea King
You're really going to like it.
Quite understandable.
is on the air.
Something's definitely going on here.
Take my word for it.
Now.
Come on. It's showtime.
Make it so.
Ready, go.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the program. Nice to have you with me tonight. I'm Andrea Shea King, and I'm your hostess for the next hour as we get underway. Those of you who are on my email list probably got this email blast today talking about tonight's show, reminding you that tonight we're going to be talking about Lieutenant Colonel Terry Lakin, a physician who now sits in a cell at Leavenworth Federal Penitentiary for daring to ask the question that so many in America are asking, but the ones who could do something about it aren't asking it at all. If they are, they're whispering it behind their hands. Tonight we're talking with Terry Lakin's brother, Dr. Greg Lakin, and Marco Ciavellino, who is the trustee for the Terry Lakin Action Fund. But before we get to that, let me welcome everybody who's with us in the chat room, as well as the folks who are listening to us on the stream and in the archive in the future tense. We've got Ghostwriter Radio, who's with us from Las Vegas, in the chat room, along with Mabel in St. Cloud from Central Florida. Texas GOP, let's see, Graybeard from Illinois. He's our helicopter medevac pilot. Nice to have him with us tonight. Evidently, he's off duty tonight, so we're glad he made it. Jet Driver 2 is with us as well, our retired airline pilot. Nice to have you with us. And, of course, Third Wave Dave, who is our chat room host and show producer, hailing from Northern California, who posts over at thirdwavedave.blogspot.com. And, in fact, tonight Dave posted that tonight on the show, Lieutenant Colonel Terry Lakin's brother, Dr. Greg Lakin, and Marco Ciavellino, trustee for the Terry Lakin Action Fund. We're going to be discussing the Action Fund as well as what is going on with Lieutenant Colonel Terry Lakin as he sits in a cell in Leavenworth Penitentiary. So joining me right now is Marco Ciavellino. Marco, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Andrea.
Also joining us is Dr. Greg Lakin, who is the brother of Terry Lakin. He's a family physician, and he comes to us by phone as well. Greg, welcome to the program.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Nice to have you both. Okay, I'm going to start with, first of all, just an overall, and I know we've got an outline that we're going to follow here in order to stay focused, but overall, I know, Marco, you spoke with Terry just a little bit ago. Just in a quick synopsis, and we'll get into detail about this in a minute. How is he doing?
Well, actually, remarkably well, if you consider doing well in prison. Terry has found the whole thing in many ways fascinating, obviously not really wanting to be there, but he is enjoying his time there. He's met a lot of interesting people. He's taken a very personal interest in a number of the prisoners who obviously don't have the kind of support that he has. He's gotten adjusted to the schedule. He says the food's okay. He's working in the library, and overall his biggest complaint is that there's just not much for them to do, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. It's really a bit fascinating at how the prison environment plays out for these guys.
I'm very curious about that, and I want to get into that in just a little bit, the types of people, the types of prisoners that are there. I mean, if Terry is a prisoner there and he's a professional, he's a 18-year Army flight surgeon, medical physician, I mean, I'm wondering what other types of professionals are in there as well. But let's start first, Marco, with you giving the background on setting up this trust fund for Terry Lakin's family. Give us a little bit of how did this all come about, and how is it doing?
Well, it's very interesting, Andrea. I met Terry Lakin and his family about 11 months ago when the whole process started, working on the Safeguard site. And so a few days, really just I guess a week before the trial, Terry called me and said, we'd like you to be the administrative trustee. And then I had a call with Greg and with Healy's brother, and they concurred, and so they sent me the document, and that's all I had. And so at that point, we had to turn it into a real working fund. So there's all the issues that people don't realize go into this. We had to do bank accounts. We had to do P.O. boxes. We had to build the website that many of you have seen. We had to set up stationery and a logo. We had to create the PayPal account. We had to coordinate the existing efforts, some fundraising that was already in process. We had to deal with some other people who are very interested. And now, as a result of that, the Action Fund has become really the turning point for Terry Lakin's kind of public identity. And so Greg and I have now had to deal with talking to people who are already raising money, people who want to do products about Terry, people who want to represent him. So it's really turned into a pretty steady stream of work. So every day we get checks in through the P.O. box with wonderful notes from people that we scan and send to Terry. We get a lot of donations through PayPal. Our bookkeeper aggregates all that and loads it up. We send out thank you notes every week to all of the donors. And then there's a steady stream of correspondence that comes through, and most of it is just very, very positive. People have really seemed to recognize what Terry's contribution has been, and we'll talk about that a little bit more with Greg, and are beginning to see the need to support this wonderful man who put it all out on the line for our country. And so that's kind of now becoming the week-to-week work of the Terry Lakin Action Fund. How it's doing? It's doing fairly well. We've had a steady stream of contributions. A lot of people have established recurring contributions, but working along with some other folks who are familiar with the space and Terry's current situation, as we did in our recent mailing, we're targeting around a $12,000 to $14,000 a month target, which a very small portion will go to administration. The bulk of it goes to Peely's household expenses and aggregate funds for potential health insurance, which they will need to pay at some near future time, and money to help with civilian legal costs, which could be considerable, and we'll address that a little bit later on talking about appeals. And then, of course, we have no idea what's going to happen to Terry when he gets out and what his status will be as a doctor. So that's kind of the current status of the fund. I've enjoyed talking to people all over the country and just really been encouraged on behalf of Terry for the interest in his case.
And are you surprised at the outpouring for him?
Well, yes and no. Having done this for 11 months with Ducky Hemingway and Safeguard, even though we got a fair amount of pretty volatile letters and emails from people, a bulk of the people are very supportive. And so it's just been a pleasure to see it. We've gotten everything from $1 donations from people who said, this is all I can afford, to very large donations in the multiple thousands. And we've just gotten wonderful, sweet notes from people. I think that what happened is, as people really reflected on the outcome of Terry's case, and as we know, some people really were a little frustrated with the fact that the way he ended up pleading, but they're now starting to realize what he accomplished, and that this issue is now the mainstream of even late-night comedy, and that there are dozens of states now trying to do ballot initiatives, and that it keeps coming up over and over and over again now, just a constant outpouring. In many ways, Terry's case really legitimized the issue, and a lot of it had to do with the initial strategy of both attorneys, that we wanted to keep it focused on one thing and one thing only, that is, show us proof of your eligibility, end of story, and everything else kind of goes to the side. And so that's been positive, and that's what I am seeing, and Greg and I are seeing in the Action Fund from the people who are contributing. So.
Wow, that sounds very, very heartening. You mentioned Safeguard. You're referring to, of course, your website, safeguardourconstitution.com, correct?
Correct. Yes.
Okay. All right. That
site
go
was
ahead. I was
created
going to ask you.
Yeah, to support Terry's initial case with the initial attorney, who later was replaced by Neil Puckett, who did the trial. Safeguard is still active. It's a little bit dormant. We've kind of let it ride a little bit until we see where things are going, but it continues to be a wealth of information for anybody interested in the background of the case. All the legal documents are there, all the background, Terry's original video, lots of great information for people interested in the case.
And you did the videos of Terry, and also the graphics too. You were really the person who created the iconic imagery for Dr. Lakin through this whole ordeal.
So that is correct. And yes, I did the design for both sites, and I did all the artwork and the T-shirts and the banners. And it really, honestly, it's been just astounding, kind of a little surrealistic to be sitting here and see my stuff show up on CNN or see a guy get arrested. This wonderful guy, Lone Star, does all these videos, got arrested holding the flyers that Ducky and I designed. And, so it's been a little strange from that side to see all this stuff, and yet both sites have gotten a lot of good response from people, and we've managed to stay up, even though I'm sure there's been a few attack attempts on them. But they were designed to be fairly durable, and they have been. And the hosting company I work with has monitored them very carefully in high-load situations. We've had big stories, and basically they've run well. And both sites get a lot of traffic. I mean, both those sites typically get anywhere from 200 to 400 visitors a day, peaking at 2,000 to 3,000, 4,000, and big events from almost every country in the world every single day.
Wow, that's pretty good. So safeguardourconstitution.com, and then the other one is, you know what, I wrote it down and I can't find the doggone thing.
Right,
Tell us what the...
It's terrylakinactionfund.com, or you can just go to terrylakin.com, and you'll get there. And that site is that. Now, the Safeguard site does have a donate button on it. That's just to contribute to Safeguard's operations. But the Terry Lakin Action Fund is the site where contributions go specifically to support Terry's family and his potential legal fight. So that's where you need to go if you want to support Terry.
All right. Okay. Thanks, Marco. Dr. Greg Lakin, I'd like to talk with you now about the trial. You've been through, you and your family have been right there with Terry. You've gone through this ordeal with him. Tell us what it was like to go through this trial. Even prior to that, give us some sense for those of us who couldn't be there but were reading about it. What was it like to be there?
Well, even before the initial trial, Terry had been trying for 18 months to 2 years to try to get this burning question answered with regard to the eligibility of the commander-in-chief of the military. And, it is such a basic but all-encompassing question that he tried through normal channels, and he just, was basically stonewalled. And on the Army's behalf, it's an unusual position to be put in, and so most military people that have questioned the eligibility of or wanted clarification of the commander-in-chief have been denied, saying that they lack standing. Their ties weren't close enough to the commander-in-chief to even challenge that. So his thought was, and he's been overseas many times. He's been, to Bosnia and into Afghanistan and decorated in Panama and just different areas of conflict for 18 years now, and but he's not afraid. He's not afraid, and he believes in sacrificing for his country, whether it's politically or career-wise or putting his life on the line. He's done all that, and so his deal was, that the next big deployment could only be ordered by the commander-in-chief, and so when circumstances kind of chose him also. So when Obama stated for all the world at West Point, in fact, stated that he was signing an order for a 30,000 troop surge back to Afghanistan, Terry knew legally that he should have standing. If anybody would have standing, it would be him. This is a direct order by the president to deploy. Again, which he's already done. And so his deal was, I want clarification this time first. I'm ready to deploy again. I'm happy to do it for my country, but I want clarification that you are a valid, constitutionally valid commander-in-chief. And with clarification, I'll go. And so the thought was that, he now has standing. And by all civilian legal reasoning, I would think that that's probably a valid assumption. However, when he was charged with failure to deploy, and he pled guilty to that. He said ahead of time that he is failing to deploy until he gets clarification. It's not like he's not admitting what he did. He's trying to force the issue, basically. He's trying to compel element of discovery that should have been done long ago. However, it didn't work out. Unfortunately, the motion hearing by the military judge just took judicial notice that he was, in fact, a valid president without any type of clarification or showing or evidence or anything. So just took judicial notice that he's, in fact, the president, so these orders are, in fact, valid. So basically, you don't get to, we go to trial, and you don't get to present any evidence on your behalf. You don't get to compel any discovery. You don't get to say the word Obama. You don't get to say the word Constitution. You don't get to say the word anything. You can't even talk about it. You can't even talk about your reasoning in your defense. So
that must have been devastating. That must have been devastating when you got that news, when he got that news. I mean, what was your reaction when you heard that essentially the judge determined that he could not defend himself?
She cut his legs out from under him, you know, and so really it was over before it started. And, you know, there was always hope on my end, thinking that, okay, you know, something will come out, the truth will come out, evidence will be brought forward one way or another, you know, but this just never happened. And I will tell you, when I became more personally involved was after this motion hearing, but before any charges were filed, you know, which the charges were filed several months later, I sent letter after letter to Obama himself saying, hey, you know, Terry's request is reasonable. He just wants clarification, not just for him, but for the country, for others in the military. You know, there's been a lot of issues with regard to whether you, in fact, were a natural-born citizen. I mean, this is something that is your issue, Obama. You should have clarified it long ago. Show him in public or in private or anyway, you know, make this go away. And and all these letters that I sent to him were simply sent to the prosecutors. You know, they were forwarded to the prosecutors. And the prosecutor said, hey, we're in receipt of these letters that you sent to Obama. So I know he got them. So that's when I thought to myself, you know, here's a reporting commander-in-chief that really could have made this go away and should have, and chose not to. And so the trial was very short. It was the same judge throughout. So the same judge that heard the motion hearings was also the judge at the trial and was also the judge at sentencing. And so the trial was short. I mean, he pled guilty. And then sentencing, he finally got to tell of his story. And I think that probably mitigated his sentence. I mean, you know, but when you plead guilty to what is really a felony charge, there's going to be a sentence component with it.
Yeah.
And so here he is off in Leavenworth, and it sits wrong with me. I mean, you know, my brother has 3 little children and a beautiful wife, and he's always been very principled and willing to sacrifice. However, you know, here right before Christmas, he went off to right after sentencing. They just put you in shackles and they march you off. I mean, there's no appeal process, or if there is, it's done, you know, usually after you've done your sentence or well into it. So, in any event, so he got shackled and lost and marched off to eventually what would be Leavenworth, Kansas, and during that time, you know, during Christmas and New Year's, you know, Obama was off vacation in Hawaii, and I thought, you know, you're just down the street from the Office of Vital Statistics. Why don't you go down there and get this birth certificate? That's all he's ever asked for, you know. But none of this ever happened. So,
how is Peely? That's how you pronounce her name, Terry's wife, Peely. How is she doing, and the children as well?
You know, she's a quiet person, but she's very strong. And you know, Terry tried to prepare her as much as possible for, you know, potential outcomes, bad or good, and so she's done amazingly well. They made the I think it's 850-mile trip to Leavenworth the other day, packed up the 3 kids, and went out to see Dad, you know, in this facility. Yeah. So,
what do the kids think of this?
Well, they're the oldest is 11, and the others are younger. So, I think they understand, or at least to the younger kids, it's an adventure. It was just a road trip, to be honest with you, and they wanted to see their dad. And the oldest daughter, I think, understands. She's wise beyond her years. So it's just yes.
So now you've been out there to see him too, Greg, right?
Right, several times.
Yeah. Tell us what that experience was like. I mean, you're in the car and you're driving up to this building that must look absolutely enormous. I mean, I've seen pictures of it, and it looks like, I mean, it's just so intimidating. Give us your perspective on it as you arrived the first time.
Well, luckily I live in Kansas now, but it's still a bit of a road trip to get to Fort Leavenworth. But Fort Leavenworth is kind of in the middle of nowhere, and it's just just to get on the base, you have to have your car searched, and then you drive way back to the farthest reaches of this military base, and there's a couple of federal prisons there, and so you're right, they're just concrete bunkers wrapped by, Constantino wire and big fences, and you go through, you leave everything up front, and you're not allowed so much as a pen or anything, metal or anything, and then they put you in a smaller room where you sit around a table that's watched by the guards, and you have to keep your hands above the table at all times, and just have conversations, and there's visiting hours that are 2 or 3 hours, in the morning, and 2 or 3 hours in the afternoon, and that's it. I mean, I do think, there have been people that have tried to go up to see him that weren't relatives or close members, and they've been turned away. So I know it's not something that is open for the public.
How are his spirits, Greg? How are Terry's spirits?
He does pretty well. I mean, he's used to, he's a very emotionally strong person, emotionally resilient. And so I think his spirits are good. His concern, as Marco said, was providing for his family, because what he gave away or sacrificed in a way was, all his retirement, any benefits, any of that. They took it all away and discharged him, basically. So it amounts to a dishonorable discharge and loss of all retirement benefits. Just for really what is a political concern, not just a political concern. It's a deep, rooted concern for this country, and so it's just another.
It's a constitutional concern.
It is. It is.
Yeah. I'm kind of curious here. I mean, he was wanting to see the birth certificate. Was that specifically what he was asking of the president, or was he asking the president to prove his eligibility? Period.
No, I think that's it. With regard to, he didn't say, "Hey, I personally want to see your birth certificate." He said, "I want clarification on your natural-born citizenship status. I want clarification." And it wasn't even him. It's like any party. Just some independent agency, some independent group, some, official, just a showing that he is in fact eligible. Because it's really never been done correctly. And as time goes on, it just seems like more questions arise and more concerns. And yet people are, I don't know, I'm really stymied why there has not been more efforts on the part of, our government officials to now look into this and try to find, what is the truth? Isn't that important? I don't know.
Well, the other question, too, is that a lot of people are saying that the birth certificate part of this is really superfluous, because the fact that his father or the man he claims is his father, was a British subject. And so that automatically disqualified Obama Jr. from being president because he doesn't fit the constitutional definition of a natural-born citizen. One of his parents was not an American citizen. So that's another point of contention that nobody is dealing with. The leadership in Congress will not touch this. Members of Congress, with few exceptions, have even attempted to approach anything remotely connected to this, short of maybe implementing legislation that would prevent something like this from happening in the future. And so it doesn't appear likely that, at least for the foreseeable future, anything is going to be done about this. It's going to be very frustrating for you you and the Lakin family to go through this, but you know that Terry has really held his head up on this. I think he's going to come out of this a hero. And I wonder, too, will he be able to practice medicine when he is released? Is he going to go back into practicing?
Well, he's a very, very good physician. And in fact, during sentencing, he presented people, that were with him in Afghanistan and just stating that he's one of the best they've ever had, basically. He went out on patrols and he did things that, mostly physicians don't do that. And one of the witnesses talked about, how some of the people they couldn't save or one broke down into tears, talking about his dedication, but also lives that were lost. And so, what he's done has no bearing on his clinical judgment or his ability as a doctor. In fact, he's I think triple certified in several specialty areas. So I don't think it's going to affect that. However, you never know, what a Board of Health will decide at each state level or whatever. Board of Healing Arts.
Is he getting military support from the military on the QT? I mean, what kind of feedback is he getting? Are folks in the military, have they said to him, we're with you, or are they afraid of this and not saying anything? What kind of feedback has he gotten from his comrades in uniform?
Originally the enlisted men that he talked with that wanted to jump on the bandwagon, he discouraged them. He did not want to make this he did not want to, usurp or put the Army in a bad light. It shouldn't be really an Army issue. It shouldn't be a military issue. It's an Obama issue. So he discouraged, any type of following from enlisted men. That being said, a lot of retired generals, or several I know of, have spoken to me in private or public statements. He's had a lot of letters. He gets a good portion of support from retired people and people in active duty. I think they're there. I mean, they talk to him on the QT, but everybody runs a little scared, especially as they approach retirement too. I think basically military officers have concerns, but are afraid to voice them.
I'm sure they might be. We're talking with Greg Lakin, who is the brother of Lieutenant Colonel Terry Lakin, and also we're talking with Marco Sciavolino. And Marco is the fellow who has set up the trust fund for Terry Lakin's family, and you can find out more about it at birtherreportdotcom. Marco, you said that you spoke with Terry just before the show tonight. Can you share with us some of your discussion with him?
Yeah, absolutely. And in fact, it's important while we're on this one juncture, Andre, for people who go to birtherreportdotcom. At the top, there's a red link that says click here now for Terry's address. And there's some as Greg already indicated, it's a prison, right? So there's some very specific ways for people to communicate, and that's why it took so long for me to get to him. There's instructions there on how to write to him and what to send and not to send. You can't call him. He can only call out to a very narrow approved list, and it took all the way until, they told me the 18th. So 2 days ago, it took to get my name added onto that. So I finally got to speak to him tonight. And also, Greg indicated visiting. There's instructions on visiting, but basically you can't visit unless he knows you and has pre-selected you. So I finally got to talk to Terry tonight, And as I told you before the thing, you get the call, and it says, this is a prepaid call from, and then there's this little thing that goes, and you can't really hear his name, a prisoner at Leavenworth. You press 5 to accept this call, and then you press 5, and then it says, this call will be recorded, and then Terry comes on, and he has 30 minutes to talk to you, and then he has to call back. So it was really a pleasure to speak to Terry, because I haven't talked to him since the Tuesday of the trial, or I guess that the last day of the trial, that night. So how's he doing? Well, as Greg said, being a trained officer and one who's been in harm's way many times, he's kind of taking it in stride. He has taken a great interest in a number of the prisoners and their cases, and what he's finding is very similar to what Chuck Colson found years ago before he founded Prison Fellowship, that when you get into the prison for someone who's not really a criminal like Terry, you start to look at these people and you say, wow, there's a crazy amount of inequity here in the application of justice. There's some people who really, did really, really bad things, but he's finding a lot of prisoners are there under very, very questionable, very, very, very thin reasons, and yet there they are in prison. And there also seems to be some inequity based on resources, like Terry's gets a lot of attention from the outside. Some people have had a hard time getting information from their JAGs and so forth about their cases. So that's one thing that's occupied his time. The second thing is he now works in the library, and so he's reading all these great pieces of literature he hasn't read for a long time. But most specifically, he found a set of the great classics, which includes the whole section of all the founding documents of our country. And so he is reading all the letters of Jefferson and Washington. He's reading the Constitution. He's rereading all these documents. He said he's really enjoying it. He hasn't gotten to do that for years. His cell is about 16 by 8 feet. He's got a cellmate who he gets along with very well. It's just as you see on TV. It's a concrete cell with a steel toilet, 2 steel beds, a steel ladder. There's not much there. They can keep 20 books in their cell or 20 letters. That's it. They get these little teeny Walkmen that they use to listen to the 2 televisions, for which they have absolutely no choice on stations, and that's how they listen to them, so there's no speakers out there. He did tell me because the prison population as a whole has been on good behavior, they are going to let them watch the Super Bowl, which I think was important, right, for them.
Yeah.
He said that they let them stay up New Year's Eve, and everybody behaved so well. They said, okay, we'll let you stay up late and watch the Super Bowl out of your cells. So that's it. He said this is a brand new facility that, at least in its initial opening this last few years, I'm not sure when it opened, it really wasn't really planned right in a sense in that there's very little for them to do, which of course is a challenge because then they all get kind of bored, and so it's very difficult. He only gets a couple of hours a day to get outside, if that, and it's been snowing there, so they haven't gotten out. He gets to make calls. In his particular unit, they can make calls pretty much whenever they're free to, though obviously they have to pay for them. His little prison fund is funded, though, as those of you who read the letters know, he can only spend $35 a month on personal items. That's kind of interesting. He loves the letters. He said he's getting anywhere. It's ranged from as high as 100 or more to averaging around 20 to 30 letters a day. The gentleman at the prison I spoke to said this is quite extraordinary, and they actually take Terry to a separate room to let him read his mail because he gets so much mail. But he said he frequently cries every day when he reads some of these letters people are writing, in these compassionate, caring letters. And those letters are all being sent back to Peely for storage, and eventually they may become part of some future publication one way or another. But he is overwhelmed by the outpouring of care from the population, general population. And one of the things you mentioned earlier, this is the last point I'll make here, none of the people at the prison obviously can make any comment about his case. But Terry said it was obviously that everyone knew about his case. And that in prison, many of the prisoners have come and said, so you're the guy, you're the guy. Wow. I'm really, it's amazing you did that. I would have done the same thing if I could have, but I was just a private and I didn't know what I could do. So I think he's getting positive feedback from some fellow prisoners who are aware of the case. Kind of fascinating stuff. Greg, do you have anything to add to that?
No, well, just like you said, Marco, these letters are helping him get through tough times. He does get a lot of them. He feels bad in the fact that he's only allowed 10 envelopes a week. So he can't respond to but a very few letters. But he hopes that when he gets out, that he can get back in touch with people and acknowledge his supporters even more.
And by the way, here's where on that one point, Andre, he sends me letters, a couple letters a week. He carefully writes out every person's address, and we are putting those into a database. So those people will actually get. We're waiting for one more batch to be loaded, so they're actually going to get a personal response from the trustee from the fund with a little thank you note and some kind of insights and thanking them for communicating with Terry in prison. But he's quite a celebrity there because of the volume of mail he gets.
Oh, it certainly sounds like it. As a matter of fact, we had Commander Kirshner, Charles Kirshner, on the program a couple of weeks ago, and he was saying that he had heard it, and it may have come from you fellas. I don't know. He wouldn't tell us, but he said that he had heard that one of the prison guards there said that he kind of felt like he was a rock star. That he was sympathetic with him. He was with him in terms of standing up for what he was standing up for. Those aren't quite the same words. I'm paraphrasing, but
they're just when I've been there, they say, "Oh, you're Lakin," and I kind of get, I don't know if it's extra treatment, but extra acknowledgement just for being his brother when I get walked back the 100 yards or so to his cell. But it is interesting, and I think they respect the fact that he stood up to arguably the most powerful man in the world, and tried to hold him accountable, and let him know that you're not above the Constitution, and time will tell if he eventually succeeds.
Yeah, I'd be curious to know how the inmates knew about this. If they're only allowed to watch 2 different television channels, are they getting news? Are they getting newspapers? I mean, are they on the Internet? Do they have access to the outside world to find out what's going on in the world?
I know that they have computer access, but they can't download anything or copy anything or, and I also know that they talk amongst themselves a lot. But I mean, that is a good question. How did they seemingly know so much about him before he even arrived?
Well, in one of Terry's letters, he alluded to this a little bit. So they have access to computers, but only to type. This is really interesting. I love this. When they're doing their own legal work in the prison, they can use they cannot store anything. So Terry said anything he's typed up already, you have to type it up and print it out. And then when you want to go back and keep working, you have to re-enter it into the word processor. You can't save it anywhere. There's no Internet access, and so the way that apparently Terry and most of them get news is just from letters, like when that gal TC yelled out during the reading of the Constitution a few weeks ago. She was at Terry's trials and was a big supporter of Terry's, and and that's he found out because like a couple days later, he got some letters from people, and I sent him some pictures of that trial and stuff. In fact, there's simply no way to send anything recorded. I asked Terry today. I said, "Well, what if I got a recordable greeting card and recorded something?" And they said, "Well, when you get those, they bring them in and say, would you like to see it before we destroy it? But they won't let you listen to it." So, it's funny because I asked for that today. I was going to record TC's outburst in Congress and send it to him, but they can't. They're very restrictive about this, and like I've had to tell some people who've called me and gotten all upset about this. Like look, he's in prison. This is prison, and he's not being treated any differently than any other prisoner. This is just the way it is. And I agree with Greg. It is hard to believe that Terry Lakin is in prison. I don't know why he's there. We know why he's there, but it's still hard to believe over what amounts to nothing more than a single sheet of paper, Yeah,
I know it. Well, I also wanted to ask you about the prison diaries. He's keeping a diary while he's there, correct?
Yes, he's been doing a lot of writing, and if you've read the prison diaries, you probably have read they basically get these little 3-inch rubber pens. They're made of rubber, and they're very hard to write with. And plus, he jokes around in his letters that he's a physician, so it's like a double whammy, right? Because he can't write very well anyway. And but he's been sending me these letters, and I'm having them transcribed. I've got 3 more that are being transcribed right now. And then we scrub them because there's some things that are personal or not appropriate for public, but we leave most of it. And, yes, he's keeping very detailed diaries, the last 3 letters that I received, and Greg's seen them, the scans of them. He's kept like a day-by-day diary of each thing that's gone on each day, and they're really fascinating. And whenever I put one up on the Terry Lakin Action Fund site, it will typically spread around the Internet in about 2 hours. It's really fascinating. So,
do you see a book in the offing? We heard rumors that there might be a book that he'll write when he gets out. Is that true?
Well, we don't know. I mean, Greg and I have both received various offers from people to write books or write about Terry. And Greg, as I'm correct, we have no formal offers at this point, right? I haven't seen any.
No, we just hope that we want a happy ending for, if there is a book, we want a happy ending for it, or at least a happier ending.
Yeah.
So,
no doubt about it. Yeah, no doubt.
So
and the prison diaries.
Yeah. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
The prison diaries are published over at birtherreportdotcom.
Yep, there's a link right below the main header that says "Keep up with Terry's story." Click here to visit the prison diaries. Right now there are 6 entries. 4 of them are actually diaries. One of them is a summary of an early call with Peely, and one of them is actually Greg Lakin on the radio. But like I said, we have 3 more that will be posted in the next couple of days, very lengthy ones. And people just love these, and they're real interesting insight. And Terry is being extremely introspective about his time there. It's really quite fascinating.
Boy, I bet it is. In fact, I'm going over to that website right now. Let's see. I wanted to let the listeners know that if you have any questions, now's the time to call 646-478-4604. Again, that's 646-478-4604. There was something that I wanted to mention, and I just used the tab I had up to ask you. I received a letter today from a reader who, and I'm gonna see if I can find this here. Just give me a moment while I bring it up. This reader wrote that his father is a retired officer in the military, and essentially the father was saying, look, it was not up to Lieutenant Colonel Lakin to question the commander-in-chief, that he takes his orders from the Pentagon. And so, therefore, he didn't, even though he sympathized with Lieutenant Colonel Lakin and he was in agreement with him about Obama, he just thought that the appropriate protocol had not been followed. What do you say to that? I'm sure you've heard this before. Do you disagree with that argument that because Terry was being ordered into war, that order, is my understanding, comes from the commander-in-chief and not from his immediate commanding officer, it comes through the Pentagon to his commanding officer, but ultimately it comes from the commander-in-chief.
So
what do you say to somebody
right.
who argues that?
No, that's exactly right. And that's really how they kind of play it both ways. And so Terry tried through normal military channels, and I forget the sections under which he requests further clarification and voices concerns through the normal chain of command. His immediate commander, and then the commander above him, and he went up the chain of command and didn't get any kind of responses, nor did he get responses from them saying what to do next or how, what should he do. Basically, he didn't get any information. So he, if you go to any military building, you will see the chain of command, and it's all pictures listed, and they all end at the president. Every single one of them end at the president. And there's no doubt that it's only the commander-in-chief that can order a deployment, especially a major one. And so they cannot say that, now they try to say, okay, well, his immediate commander ordered him to this fort to prepare for deployment, and so he's in violation of that. But it's all done with the act of getting ready to deploy and getting and the deployment is ordered by the commander-in-chief. So, technically he's right. The question is, are you going to look at legalese and details and are you going to try to do the right thing and figure out really what is, I don't know. It's just, it gets confusing in there when you hear different attorneys talk about different theories.
Different aspects, yeah.
Right. But in the end, I mean, I think we all know who really made the order. And the thing is, if you have a question and you want further clarity, you can't be doing that after you're deployed. It's disruptive. It's not the place to do that over in Afghanistan. It's the place to do it, before you go, while you're here, while you can, meet with people and get answers. And so the Army just wasn't prepared to do any of this. And if you look at all the uniform military code, I mean, it's signed off by the president. It's his law. So Terry really got prosecuted by the president's law for questioning the president. I mean, it's kind of it's kind of interesting.
Yeah. The telephone number is 646-478-4604. We'll take your calls. We've got a caller on the line, and I'm not sure where this caller is coming in from. I'm seeing ones across the board, so that's either Skype or it's a cell phone. But anyway, go ahead, caller. You're on the air with Greg Lakin and Marco Ciavallino. Go ahead.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I hear you loud and clear.
Okay, just checking. I'm Spackle in the chat room, and I have a question for Greg, which is, doesn't Terry have a daughter that was born in Hawaii?
He does. Yeah. No, he was at Schofield Barracks for many years at the military base there as a physician. His daughter was born in Hawaii.
Yeah, so I'm wondering why. It probably would have made his appeal to the public more powerful if he had gone ahead and gotten a long form birth certificate for his daughter. If he could order one today, like everybody wants Obama to do, and pay $10 or $15 to order the long form birth certificate, and then show it to people and say, here, I got my own daughter's long form birth certificate. How come Obama can't get his? Did he ever try that?
He did, and I actually he tried to do it through the mail, and I actually tried to do it personally when I was over there because I've spent time in Hawaii too, and the Office of Vital Statistics was closed that Friday. But I will tell you that he's, as a physician over there, he's seen numerous birth certificates. And that certificate of live birth is something he's never seen before, nor is it a birth certificate. And then he personally signed off on, he's been the delivery physician, not in Hawaii, but at Fort Bragg.
Wait a minute. Are you saying the certification of live birth is not a birth certificate?
I'm saying it's not the original birth certificate or a copy of the original birth certificate.
It's not. I agree with that, but I mean, in any event, so he never actually did pursue it and try to get a copy of his own daughter's long form birth certificate.
I honestly can't answer that. I know she has one. I know she has one. Just like all birth certificates, all birth certificates that I've signed have location and doctor's name and other people, they have information on them. And so I know that his daughter has one. But I don't know if he's personally got one or could use that in any type of would it be compelling evidence? I think you're probably right.
I just posted a link in the chat room, and if you go to that link, the Hawaii government state website says you can't get a long form birth certificate anymore, and that's a link to a program that they do for Native Hawaiians, ethnic Hawaiians, that if you're more than 50% ethnic Hawaiian, they try to help you with all kinds of programs. It's called the Hawaiian Homelands Program. And they say they prefer the long form birth certificate if you have one, but they explain on the website that they don't give them out anymore, and that if you don't have your long-form birth certificate right now, if you apply for a birth certificate, you're going to get a cold a certification of live birth, just like the one that Obama published. That's why I was wondering. The state of Hawaii said that even for people that they're trying to help because they're ethnic Hawaiian, if they can't get a long-form birth certificate, and if Terry couldn't get a long-form birth certificate for his own daughter, then how is President Obama supposed to get a long-form birth certificate for himself?
Right.
Well, that's a good question. Yeah.
Well, I think that's something that's fairly recent in the last few years because it's always been before. I understand we've all gone to electronic records now, but
right. In the state of Washington, mm-hmm. the only birth certificate you get is on a little card that you can put in your wallet.
Mm-hmm.
And I live in North Carolina, and in North Carolina, all you can get is a short form birth certificate too. So I just don't understand how President Obama could get with unless they put him above the law that says that you can't get a long form birth certificate anymore. I don't see how he could possibly get a long form birth certificate.
Andrea, this is Marco. Let me just address that because we're getting in the last few minutes. There's a few more things to cover.
Yep.
This is one of the issues, and I appreciate your comments. In fact, I think it's a very clever idea. However, what we're missing is that the birth certificate is just part of the equation. As Greg just indicated, it's not even the physical sheet of paper, though everyone's expected to have one of those in this country. My daughter just got her learner's permit, and we had to take a real live birth certificate to MBA and show it to two people within 20 minutes just to get a learner's permit, right? So it's not so much the certificate itself. That's just part of the equation. It's the facts surrounding his birth, as Greg indicated. The normal facts of a birth certificate are, as he indicated, the doctor, the hospital, the time of birth, the attending physician, the mother's name, father's name. These are all part of our birth certificate. And so, yes, the birth certificate is just the start of it. And as I said, I wrote 2 full-page ads for Terry that were in the Washington Times weekly edition. A little phrase that we wrote in there was, "It's not like Terry is asking to see some secret college tattoo or even unseal the records of some juvenile indiscretion. He just wants to see, as to start, a certificate that every U.S. citizen is expected to provide numerous times in their lives. And why this little teeny sheet of paper is such a big deal is a complete mystery to Greg and me and Terry and millions of other people." So, and in fact, one of their points there, recently 2 investigators went down there and found people who were born the day and after Barack Obama's alleged birth and location, and they had long-form birth certificates, and they published them. It was in a story. So it's just all kind of a moot point. The fact is, all Terry asked for, and millions of others asking for, is just simple, verifiable proof of eligibility according to the Constitution, and that's it. Mm-hmm. And that's the end of the story. Yeah. So that's it. Now, a couple of things real quick, Andrea, and then I'd like Greg to finish out. But we talked. I would encourage people to go to birtherreportdotcom and to subscribe to the newsletter, the Constant Contact newsletter. I typically try to get something out every Sunday afternoon or evening with updates for the week for people who are very interested. And that doesn't cost anything. I've kept them very simple and short. If people often ask, what can we do? I'll give you a couple points, let Greg finish out a few. Number 1 is support Terry Lakin more than almost anyone else in this space. He has literally given up his liberty, his livelihood, his pension, potentially his future employment, since he simply just believed this is an issue that had to be addressed and has brought this to the forefront in a way that no one else has been able to do, though there's lots of great people involved in this process, as we know. And then thirdly, the legal, without respect to the Barack Obama administration's choices, the legal processes in the country still work, and there are many states working on setting up ballot initiatives, because what people discovered out of this whole thing was the horror that while every state has laws for eligibility, very few states, or almost none, had any prescribed method for enforcement, or no one ever expected this to happen. And so now you're finding state after state after state starting to say, look, you want to run for dog catcher, you want to run for president, whatever it is, you got to prove your eligibility. And that's going to cause quite a big row in 2012 if enough states get these passed. So get with your state senators, congressmen, whoever your state has,
and say, look, we don't want anyone on our ballot, federal or state, who has not proven their eligibility to run for the office that they seek. End of story. So, Greg, do you have a couple more thoughts?
No, I completely agree. I mean, we want to make sure that this never happens again. I mean, this was an absolute job requirement for the office of the presidency. It's a requirement that Obama knew when he applied for the job, that you have to be, born of this country, and that, at the very least, we can assure that it doesn't happen again through, legislation through different states. And then with regard to Terry, I mean, hopefully some good will come of all this, and I know that he hopes that also, to let people know that no matter who you are, the Constitution still stands for something. It is truly the law of the land, and he appreciates people's support.
Well, we appreciate the fact that you both came on tonight to tell us what's going on, and as well, please extend to Terry next time you talk with him that we're in here pulling for him too. And folks, again, if you want to write to Terry, the address, you can find it over there at terrylakinactionfund.com. You can read the prison diaries over there, and more importantly, you can hit the button and give a donation to help with the trust fund for Peely and the 3 children. And it would be a real, as they say in Yiddish, it would be a mitzvah, a good deed.
Now, Andre, there's one other way. At the Terry Lakin Action Fund site on the top right, there's a tab that says Shirts and More. And we did some really nice shirts of that iconic photo of Terry. And from there, there's a link to what we call Birther Shirts, which is another little website we called Opinions and Armpits. And that site has these 3 very funny shirts on it, one of which says, birth certificates are like belly buttons, everyone's got one except apparently Barack Obama. And it has a picture of him with his top off, and it says, here's the belly button, where's the birth certificate, okay? And there's a couple other funny shirts there. So either go to terrylakinactionfund.com, click on the Shirts and More, and you'll see a link on the left to this, or just go to opinionsandarmpits.com, and you can buy those shirts. And the proceeds from these shirts through Cafe Press flow into the trust fund. So,
All right.
So if you're a T-shirt person and you don't mind wearing a bold message, check these out. They're very funny.
Cool. Very cool. And I see you've got coffee cups and hats, too, ball caps, too, so that's good, too. Listen, gentlemen, thank you so much for what you're doing. I mean, you are an inspiration for all of us. It does our heart good to know that there are soldiers on the civilian side as well as in uniform who are standing up for what's right and defending the Constitution. So I want to say a heartfelt thanks to you on behalf of my listeners and myself and my producer. Thanks so much for what you're doing, and thanks for coming on the program and telling us all about it. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Andrea.
Well, thank you, Andrea.
Thank you. Okay, Greg Lakin and Marco Ciavallino. And, again, the website is terrylakin.com. I'm giving it to you that way because it's just easier to remember, terrylakin.com. It'll take you there. It'll get you where you need to be, and it'll help out the Lakin family. And with that, folks, we're going to say good night. I appreciate your being with us. We'll be back again tomorrow night at 9, and I'll look forward to seeing you then. And God bless you, and say a prayer for Terry Lakin and his family and for all of our soldiers out there who are out there defending the Constitution. And again, thanks to Greg Lakin and Marco Ciavallino. I should know how to say that in Italian, Ciavallino. And we'll see you again tomorrow night, everybody. Take care, good night, and God bless.